How free is France? It's an awkward question. Recently, many people have spoken up to denounce France for claiming that it allows religious freedoms. The country has also been criticised by various charities for arresting hundreds of civilians who have expressed some sympathy for the terror attack in Paris on the 7th of January 2015.
Consider these facts. Firstly, it's the only European country that uses the law to discriminate against Muslim women. Secondly, a black comedian has suffered over 80 judicial procedures and has been fined thousands of euros for the crime of political satire. And thirdly, French police forcefully removed 5 children from a Muslim family because their father was simply accused of links with ISIL. One of the children was a 2-month-old baby who needed to be fed, which falls far short of international human rights standards. Other laws ban the right to verbally defend terrorism in poorly worded regulations which can easily be abused by the authorities.
All this causes analysts to question France's commitment to civil liberties. So how should we describe France's approach to human rights? Is France violating freedom of expression in a religious context? And to what extent are France's vague restrictions on freedom of speech a genuine threat to liberty? These are the simple questions we sought to answer. Let's start with the fact France is the only country in Western Europe which has laws to discriminate against Muslim women. We asked people here in Britain and in France if they believe the claim that France respects and allows religious freedom. Here's what we found out.
Oui, la liberté religieuse est garantie, mais...
Yes, religious freedoms are guaranteed in France, but we also have the principle of secularism in schools. So we don't allow any discriminatory or religious symbols, neither the kippah or the veil. It is showing this religious difference which isn't acceptable, but practicing religion is not forbidden.
They're very fortunate to have the choice. A lot of Muslim women in Iraq and the other countries don't have that choice, and that if they choose to do that, that's fine, but it's not necessarily the best thing for all Muslim women.
Religious freedom is not guaranteed anywhere. As long as we have different countries with different cultures, we always have to be worried about liberty of religion and freedom of expression, and it's like that everywhere in the world.
I guess it's every country's right to have their own rules and regulations. They're not necessarily against Muslims to tell them what to wear and not what to wear, because I guess that's for all religions over there, so it's just rules and regulations. Like here we have people, they can't grow their beard if they're working in the food industry because it's, you know, hygiene. So I guess they might have their own reasons that I should look into and read more.
Liberty is one of the fundamental values of the French Republic. When it comes to religious liberty, France is a secular country which respects the conscience of every individual. Me personally, I have friends who are Jewish, Christian and Muslim, though I myself am secular. But I have friends who practice their religion in more or less a free manner.
I think it's a bit of an overreaction. If that's what they want to wear, let them wear it. We don't stop people wearing other things.
How plausible are the French government's claims that it allows religious freedoms? We put that question to our experts.
I think France has religious freedom. I mean, that's evident by the number of religious groups that are resident in France. For example, you have Christians, you have Jewish people, you have Muslims of different minorities, you have Sikhs and Hindus as well. But I think the problem arises when the state legislates against what women should wear or shouldn't wear. I think that choice should be left up to the women. So, meaning that women should be the only ones who decide what they wear, what they shouldn't wear, and that should not be legislated by the state.
I actually work as a primary school teacher, and in this country I can wear my scarf and dress according to my religion and do my job, but in France I would not be allowed to do that. So no, I don't believe that France allows religious freedom when it would not allow me to do my job and practice my religion. What France is trying to do is impose a fundamentalist extreme version of secularism where it doesn't give equality to everybody to practice their different religions. It says that you cannot enter the public sphere if you are a person of religion. You must strip that away from yourself if you're going to be allowed into public, into politics, into education, have those opportunities, so no.
A black comedian has experienced over 80 judicial procedures and has been fined thousands of euros as punishment for the crime of creating political satire. Do the public believe that France is genuinely committed to freedom of speech?
Satire is perfect. It creates reactions and ideas. It criticizes ideas, and ideas can only get mad at. The only things bad would be if he had any wrongdoing or any actions that hurt people. Because political satire doesn't really hurt anybody. It raises ideas and awareness. And I don't think he should be fined. And first of all, free speech is one of the most sacred things that humans have. That's the main thing. And I will never want freedom of speech to stop.
17 people dead is a high price to pay for satirical drawings. There is no reason to let an actor to do whatever he wants. But anyway, I don't really know his works, so I can't comment.
I think they're reacting too quickly with the statute book in France, if the two examples you've given me. One would have hoped that there could be a more of a negotiated settlement, and you don't need the law to crack down on satire. That's the beginning, that's the proverbial thin end.
Thin end of what?
Thin end of repression, the repressive wedge. You know, start with that, move on to something else.
La liberté d'expression.
First of all, from the moment an individual starts to hurt other people, to encroach on the territory of others regarding other people, then he's no longer free to do those things. But if he doesn't hurt anyone or wrong anybody, then he's free to do what he wants.
I think we should be allowed to express our feelings and our humour, and sometimes that's the way we can connect. Humour is a very important part in looking at other culture and looking at yourself. So I think it's fair for people to be able to do that and express themselves.
Alors, je reprends donc pour l'affaire Dieudonné, je pense pas que lui.
In the case of the black comedian, we don't offer him real freedom of speech. He has not done anything worse than the editors of Charlie Hebdo. At the same time, we condemn the terrorists who killed the people behind the drawings against the Prophet Muhammad. But it's not a good thing to restrict people like Dieudonné, who just want to talk about things that are true, but which we like to sweep under the carpet. We're silencing him because he annoys us and he says things that aren't pleasant for the government to hear.
We've had lots of satire programs going way back to the 60s, and they really tore politicians to pieces. So there's no real problem, and politicians are, what's the word? Not always self-serving, but, you know, we're only here to do as they tell us.
We asked our experts what we can learn from France's apparent willingness to use the law to penalise someone for the act of producing political satire.
I think France does allow freedom of speech, but in terms of satire, satire originally, historically, has been used to make fun of the political elite and the social elite. But when satire is used to poke fun at marginalised communities, so in this case the Jewish community, or in the case of Charlie Hebdo, the Muslim community, then I think it becomes very dangerous. And of course with satire, it also, you have to think about at what point is this satire, and at what point does satire turn into hate?
France has a huge hypocrisy over freedom of speech. If you want to attack Muslims, you have absolute freedom to do so. Whereas they've banned pro-Palestinian rallies, they have issued fines for people for supposedly insulting France or insulting public officials. There are laws in place that place huge restrictions on what you can say, but it has huge double standards where it's open season to attack Muslims, but anyone who wants to express views that criticise the French establishment, then their freedom of speech is restricted. The most shocking example of double standards when it comes to freedom of speech in France is that there was a journalist who was actually fired from Charlie Hebdo for cartoons which were described as anti-Semitic. He was then prosecuted for anti-Semitism, But when the most disgusting and vile racist attacks on Muslims were published in that magazine, then everybody expects Muslims to somehow applaud that as a wonderful example of free speech.
Recently, French police forcibly removed 5 children, including a 2-month-old baby, from a family because of allegations that the father had links with ISIL. In this context, how do the public in Britain and in France regard the French approach towards human rights?
Alors sur ça, ça me paraît pas terrible comme ça à première vue.
It doesn't sound good, you know, hearing it for the first time. I mean, we should leave the children with their mother, even if the father has certain accusations against him. But whatever happens, they should leave children with their mother.
I guess if they were trying to protect people, why would they protect the children and not the wife if it's true, the allegations are true? So in a way, I think this big hype about, you know, the ISIS group and all that is scaring people and is making them try and protect their people as much as they can, especially with children. But I don't think it's the way to do it. If you're asking me for my opinion, I think, you know, they should have put more into the research, more into finding out if it's true or not. And if it turns out to be true, and he actually gets sentenced or whatever, then save the whole family, not just the children, and leave the wife behind.
En fait, je suis pas au courant de...
I'm not up to date with this, so I can't say a lot, but I think it's because of ISIL. But at the end of the day, it doesn't sound so great what the authorities did.
If he had any connection with ISIS, he should go to jail. They should handle him, but they should take the kids away if they have no other siblings, relatives, or anything like that to help the children.
Bon, en ce qui concerne...
Upon hearing this news, I feel a little bit shocked. I can't confirm whether France has done such a thing. I would like to talk about the 3-month-old baby. This act is going to really affect his future. We should think of the children first before anything else.
It's not the children's fault. And if they have no evidence of the father actually being linked to anything like ISIS or anything like that, well, then they shouldn't have taken the children away. They have no right. That's in terms of human rights. They're not allowed to take their children away from them, and the children will not be benefiting from this at all as well. So, without any evidence or anything like that, they shouldn't have taken the children at all.
The removal of children from a family on the basis of mere allegations that the father had links with ISIL is a dramatic move. We asked our experts to clarify what this tells us about the French approach towards human rights.
I mean, we're wrong to contend that France does not have human rights. It clearly does have human rights. But the issue of the family and the issue of the father having links to ISIL, we need to think about it in terms of not a security issue, not a welfare issue, but actually think about it as an issue of the social. People acquiring extremist ideas is due to their social experiences. So here we could be talking about education, here we're talking about poverty, you know, here we could be talking about religious-based discrimination. So, you know, we're talking about Islamophobia. So there are many variables to consider when we are talking about Muslims acquiring extremist ideas.
This case was particularly heartbreaking and shows that the human rights of French citizens who are Muslim are not respected at all. When I read that the young 3-month-old baby who was exclusively breastfed by its mother was taken away while the mother pleaded to be able to feed her baby or even to be able to send some of her milk with the baby, and the police just said no, we will give powdered milk, and would not let the mother stay by the baby's side. That cruelty shows treatment of Muslims as if they are not people, they don't have human rights. And again, you know, this witch hunt against Muslims shows even if the father was part of ISIS, then what crime had the baby committed, or the other children, or the wife? They were accused of no crime and yet treated in this way. As it happens, it turns out the father was on a visit to Tunisia with his family to prepare to move away from the Islamophobia they faced in France. So, you know, even the accusations were baseless. It's a terrible, terrible case.
France has been heavily criticised for arresting hundreds of civilians who have expressed some sympathy with the terror attacks in Paris. Has the French government violated freedom of expression? Is the public's view.
Absolutely, unless they're caught doing something that's against the country or against the constitution. That's it.
So do you think they should have been arrested?
Not really.
Alors, vu l'événement exceptionnel qu'on a connu,
given the exceptional actions, that took place here recently, no violations have been committed. The state, France, has its right to authorize whatever it wants.
I guess everybody has the right, especially in Europe, where you have the freedom of speech, as you're saying, to actually go out and say what they want to say, as long as they're having a civilized a demonstration, then I guess it's fine. As long as there's no problems, they're not corrupting the country, anything like that, then everybody has the right to say what they want.
Là vous utilisez un mot assez fort.
France doesn't violate any law about freedom of expression. People who express sympathy for hate, or for acts of violence, or for Islamophobia, or anti-Semitism, or who encourage terrorist acts, I condemn them. And French laws should change to punish severely any person who applauds such hateful actions.
I think we should all be entitled to express our views and to protest if we feel it's appropriate. However, I do think we get into some dangerous grounds at the moment, and there's lots of retaliation taking place, and groups are going against each other, which is not very good. So I think I'm totally in favour of protests and freedom of speech, but we also have to try to manage it now so we don't have more conflict.
Je ne sais pas si la France viole la liberté d'expression, mais encore une fois, je pense
France is violating the freedom of expression. We don't realize the consequences of the laws and actions that we are taking. We just act without realizing why we are acting in such a way. I really don't know what to say.
I don't think France should be trying to suppress free speech. I think it's legitimate to protest. It's legitimate to protest as long as it's peaceful. And so whichever side you're on.
Is it a violation of freedom of expression to arrest a large number of civilians expressing sympathy for the terror attacks? Our experts said this.
I think France, again, it would be wrong to say France does not have freedom of expression. It clearly does have freedom of expression. But in terms of sympathy, are the sympathizers supporting the attacks? The attacks must be condemned because the innocent people were killed. So in terms of sympathy, what does sympathy actually mean? Are they inciting hatred? Are they inciting violence? So I think there needs to be some kind of discussion and debate over what sympathy actually means in the case of the terrorist attacks.
A lot of these cases were people's comments taken completely out of context, twisted to mean the opposite of what they were intended for. So, the words, particularly of Muslims who say anything political, being twisted out of context and being taken as extreme or violent. We have to remember that one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. The Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, described Nelson Mandela as a terrorist, and now he's feted as a hero around the world. So while we have laws against incitement to violence, the line is being drawn to stifle all political debate.
France's laws ban people from verbally defending terrorism, but these regulations are not clearly defined. Do the public trust such unclear and vague rules?
Non, pas du tout.
We say whatever we think in France, up to the point where the government feels it's dangerous. I could insult you now, but no one will stop me. It's total liberty.
No.
Why is that?
Mr. Sarkozy is a bit right-wing, and we've got Monsieur Le Pen. So, it's a struggle. Democracy, a fragile word.
And you don't think it's been treated too well over there?
No. But I think we'll get it here eventually, in various pockets.
L'apologie du terrorisme tel qu'on le vit en ce moment, c'est la même chose que la question.
People who apologize for terrorism oblige the state.
to intervene, to be firm on such serious subjects. When you see people beheaded in other countries, it's like something out of the Middle Ages. It's shameful. French authorities are right to authorize anything it wants.
It seems to be a contradiction. It seems to be, again, the thin end. It seems to be the sort of rationale that led to Guantanamo Bay, has led to the continuation of Guantanamo Bay, has led to people getting worried here that it might occur here. It's a shame that it's happening in the European community. I would have thought we could have had a more collective response in which we played a full part in this country rather than saying Europe's not us, and that we got together and in order to sort out our mutual responses to these things without immediately becoming repressive. I think repression is the very last resort.
Sur la liberté de parole, non, je ne crois pas.
The fanatics and terrorists, if you ask me whether I think we should restrict their freedom of expression, I would say no. They have their means of expression themselves, but I also think France should take whatever decision it deems appropriate, because they have to think about the security of citizens and intellectuals who are put in danger. But I am here talking to you freely and answering your questions frankly. I'm free to say whatever I want to say in front of the camera.
I disagree with those, and I think that some things might be uncomfortable. We may not like to hear them, but that's our culture. That's what's attractive about the UK and Europe, is that we're allowed to express ourselves freely, and for government and people in authority to hear what the people are thinking. So I don't think that's right.
How credible are France's laws against verbally defending terrorism, given the vagueness with which they're worded? We gave the last word to our experts.
I think again, France has to ban any kind of hatred, any kind of support for terrorism. But in terms of freedom of speech, again, there needs to be debate what exactly is freedom of speech. You know, what does that actually mean in the context of of people's opinions and their political views?
The trouble with the kind of laws that they have in France and that our government in the UK has introduced with the new Crime, Security and Terrorism Bill is that definitions are so vague that you can prosecute for nearly anything. These vague definitions are then taken and applied to vague definitions are taken and applied to what Muslims have said out of context in order to portray us as extreme or as terrorists. These laws regarding speech about terrorism are used to stop any debate or criticism of Western foreign policy. So as soon as a Muslim becomes political and raises their voice against government foreign policy, they're labelled as extreme and persecuted under these kind of laws, and I'm afraid we're only going to see more of it until the Muslim community in France, in the UK, in Europe, in the West stands up for our rights politically and refuses to be defined by these racist politicians and tells our own story, our own narrative.
France claims to defend and uphold freedom of expression and civil liberties. However, as we've discovered from the public here in Britain and in France, in reality, French laws and practices appear to demonstrate something quite different. Far from being willing to tolerate the expression of uncomfortable views, the French government simply attempts to ban them. The conclusion is simple and disturbing. In France, you can say anything you want as long as the authorities approve of what you're saying.